Hey, good morning, everybody. You probably heard the news on Friday that Silicon Valley Bank in the United States has gone into administration effectively by the US government. It has collapsed, and this is the second biggest banking collapse in United States history. And it's something that probably will affect the rest of the banking sector, the stock market in the United States, and have ripple effects around the world when trading banking hours begin again on Monday. The thing is, with this, we have to look into what's going on and think, is this something that just happened out of nowhere? Or is this something that people knew was going to happen? Or is it even something that was planned? Well, the answer to that is not absolutely definite. But people have been warning for months, even years, that the Western financial system as it is, built entirely upon debt and fiat currency, is unsustainable. Okay, so that's a given. Interest rates have been low, really like rock bottom low for over 10 years, which is unprecedented. So there's basically been a flood of cheap money based on nothing, created out of thin air, which has gone to the big boys first so they can buy up all of the assets and real assets and property and gold and silver and infrastructure and all these kind of things. In a way that's essentially cheating. They're cheating the markets and being able to buy up real assets for themselves. This has been going on for years and years and years. To build your economy with a fiat currency that's not backed by anything is never going to be sustainable in the long term. You can keep it going for a few years, maybe a few decades, but eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. And that nearly happened in 2008 when the banks started to crash and there was contagion started to happen with Lehman Brothers. But then Bear Stearns was the next to collapse. It was bailed out. There was a government bailout of the big banks using sovereign money that then taxpayers had to pay later on. The right thing that should have been done in 2008 is to let the zombie banks and the zombie companies just collapse. And then that would cleanse the market, if you like. It would have been very, very painful for a number of years, but we would be in a stronger position today if that had happened in 2008. But of course, everyone demands that somebody takes action to do something, and so somebody does something which is not good for the long term. It looks like we may be back to where we were in 2008 here in 2023, because it's inevitable that we would return to the same point, because all of the debt, all of the instability in the banking sector, in the financial markets, in the markets is still there. It hasn't gone away. It's just been plastered over with hundreds of billions of pounds of government relief, but the systemic problems are still there and they're coming back now, potentially big time right now. I thought it was going to happen last September. It didn't. We've had 6 months of grace. We may have more months of grace. Who knows? Who knows what is going to happen in the future? But it looks like there's a potential for contagion in the banking sector. I don't know. I don't want it myself. I don't want that. I'm not hoping for it, but it may happen. But is this just something that is an accident that nobody knew about? Well, it doesn't look like it, because there's 3 bits of information about this Silicon Valley Bank which are very interesting. Now, number one is that the chief executive and a number of other executives have sold off the chief executive himself sold off, I think, over £3 million of stock in the bank over the last 2 weeks. So he's been bailing himself out over the last 2 weeks, and a number of other executives have sold off their holdings in the bank, which they are executives of. Now, why would you do that? I mean, it's kind of insider trading is illegal in the United States, so I don't know if that was or not. I'm not saying it was, but it looks a very suspicious thing that has taken place when the executives who are in the know, potentially in the know about a potential collapse of their own bank, are cashing in and cashing out their holdings in the bank. That wouldn't happen in normal circumstances, but it does happen. And so you just think about it, join the dots. Maybe some of them knew this kind of crash was going to happen. Second point of information is that there was a big hedge fund, apparently run by Peter Thiel, who has been withdrawing deposits and started withdrawing a lot of deposits on Thursday, and also advised other people to withdraw their money from Silicon Valley Bank the day before the collapse happened. The other piece of information, which is very interesting, it's not so much financial, but there is the person who was the head of financial risk management at Silicon Valley Bank seems to be what they call a diversity hire. She describes herself, she's called Jay Ursapa, and she describes herself as a queer person of color who co-chairs the LGBTQ ERG and helps spread awareness of lived queer experiences, creating a sense of community for all our LGBTQ plus employees and allies. So here's someone who is head of financial risk management who seems more concerned with queer experience than numbers and maths and figures and so on. So I don't know. I mean, she might spend the majority of her day actually looking at figures, but from her bio, it looks like her main focus, the thing right at the top of her bio, is that she's a queer person who is helping other queer people. There you go. So whatever. It's probably best to hire the best person for the job who is going to actually reduce your financial risk as their single and only focus in such a role as that. This actually then, however, leads to us considering a wider issue, because what has been happening all over the West, the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, wherever, is that companies are trying to follow this diversity, inclusion, and equality agenda, where they're not now hiring the best person for the job. They are setting themselves quotas and hiring people from minority characteristic groups deliberately ahead of people on the basis of their characteristics, so that they can fill their quotas of women, of ethnic people, of LGBT alphabet people, rather than looking for the best person for the job in all cases. Companies that do this, who do these diversity hires, often hire people who aren't up to the job and then go and mess everything up. And it's not surprising if you have a bank that hires someone. I'm not saying this particular woman is incompetent. I don't know. She might be good with figures. But if she isn't good with figures, then it's no point in putting someone as your head of financial risk management. And I made a video just a few weeks ago about South Africa. And what's happening in South Africa is a very similar thing. Their energy company is failing all over the place because they put in place, in high positions, people who can't do the job just on the basis that their skin is black. Nothing wrong with that at all. My skin is brown. Doesn't matter whether you're white, brown, or black. Put the best person for the job who is competent to do the job, Don't put someone in a job who can't do the job because they're black or queer or female, because you want someone to fill your diversity quotas, and then your company can't do what it's supposed to do because you've employed a load of people who don't know how to do the jobs that they're supposed to do, that they're hired to do. And it looks like, this company here, this Silicon Valley Bank, may have done this, put someone in a job who is not able to do the job, potentially. But it's not just limited to this one bank. This is now endemic. It's everywhere. All big companies, corporations who are following this woke agenda, which is almost all companies in the West, are now employing people who aren't up to the job because they are following these diversity criteria, and therefore they're all going to tank because they're full of incompetence. It's absolutely insane. And, compared to countries like Russia and China, who often get criticized in the West, they're not doing this. They are brilliant at science. They're brilliant at organization. Now, I'm no fan of the Chinese Communist Party at all. I don't like communism. It's awful. But they don't put people in positions who are incompetent. They put people in positions because they are competent, because they want to take over the world. They have a 100-year plan to become the prime nation. It started with Deng Xiaoping in 1987. This is the Chinese plan. And they are carrying it out by employing and training people who are competent and drilling their kids with high-grade academic facts and materials. Whereas in the West, our state schools have degenerated to such a point that we're teaching kids about neo-pronouns when China is teaching their kids about advanced calculus and differential equations and nuclear physics. And Russia the same. Russia doesn't have hardly any debt. Its debt to GDP ratio is below 10%. Western countries, their debt to GDP ratio is 100% plus and rising. Greece, it's approaching 200%. It'll never get out of that debt trap. So there's a lot going wrong systemically in all corporations and businesses in the West because they've just followed this insanity of not training people, not pursuing excellence, of pursuing mediocrity and putting people into high positions who are mediocre and incompetent. So that is another issue with this bank, potentially, and many other banks and many other corporations who are just doing things which are completely pointless and useless. And that is a wider systemic risk to the whole Western economy. Unless we very, very quickly get back to pursuing excellence and employing people who are competent on the basis that they're the best person for the job, rather than they're a woman or they're black or they're queer, then this failure, this collapse is just going to spread and spread and spread. Maybe it's too late. I hope not. I hope this could be a wake-up call. Who knows? Let's hope we can get back on our feet. Although there's going to be, it's going to be very, very tight whether we can manage it.